Alright, welcome back. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making a pause menu so that when you press the pause button, the entire game stops, and then if you press continue, you get right back into the game without anything stopping. So again, pause menu, continue, and then also if you press that quit button, we're going to quit out of the game entirely. It'd be better to probably have this go to like your main menu or whatever, but quits the game. So stay tuned and let's get started. Let's start by making a new scene, the same way that we essentially made our win and lose scenes here. So we've got our game win screen, our game over screen. We're going to use the same basic idea for making a pause screen, but we're going to have to do something else as well, and that is we're going to have to make a pause button. So in order to do that, I'm going to go in my main window here to bottom UI. I'm going to turn this into its own scene. So I'm going to right click, save branch as scene, go into the scenes, and I'll just save it as bottom UI. Now if I click this little movie clapper next to it, it's going to open that scene on its own. And I'm going to want to do a few changes to this. So I'm going to leave the top alone. I'm just going to leave that as a texture rect, but I'm going to add as a child of this a margin container. And then as a child of the margin container to hold the buttons, I'm going to add an hbox container. So hbox container. Now the hbox container is going to hold the buttons, and its exact position is going to be based on the margin container. So I'm going to go to the margin container, custom constants. I'm going to set the top margin to be -50, and the bottom margin I'm going to set that to be 20. I don't remember exactly what I did. And then for now, I'm going to leave the left and right margins to be 0. So in my hbox container here, yeah, it's probably too high, but we'll get that fixed. I'm going to add 4 texture buttons. So as a child of this, I'm going to find a texture button, and I'll just duplicate this 3 times so that I have 4 of them. In my hbox container, I'm going to go to my custom constants, my separation. I'm going to set this at 24, I think is what was good for what I was doing, but let's see. The first one here is going to be the pause button. So I'm just going to call this pause, and then these are going to be 3 booster buttons. So booster 1, this is going to be booster 2, and then this is going to be booster 3. Alright, so my pause button, I'm going to go into my art folder here, and I've updated a lot of stuff in that UI folder. My UI folder here only has a few things, but I've updated quite a few things on the itch.io for the UI, so let's take a look at that right now. Alright, so in the match 3 assets that you can find on the itch.io link below, you'll find obstacles, particles and effects, pieces, sinkers. Inside the UI, we have a separate space for panels and for buttons. So in the panels here, I'm going to grab my pause panel and drag that in. I'm also going to go to my buttons here, and I'm going to drag in a few of these buttons. Okay, so I'm going to grab the pause button, the mallet button, make color bomb, and then for now I'm just going to grab the plus 10 seconds. I'm also going to grab the continue and quit that are specifically for the pause menu. So this is continue button pause, and this is quit button pause. I'm going to grab all of those and drag them into my UI folder here. Alright, cool. Now for my pause button, I'm going to open up the textures. For the normal texture, I'm going to add my pause button there. It's a little bit big. I'm going to scale it down, and I'm going to do that. Actually, I'm going to highlight all of my buttons at once to do this to all of them. So I'm going to highlight all 4 of my buttons. I want to turn expand on, and I want to keep aspect centered. And then down here in the rect, I want to set a minimum size. And my minimum size for these is going to be 100 by 100. By default, they're 128 by 128. And that looks pretty good. It gives a good size for each of the buttons. It's maybe a bit too high. we'll have to change that in the margin container here in just a second. And then for my boosters, I'm just gonna, like, we're not doing the boosters today. I'm just gonna randomly assign these from my list here. We'll talk about how you can dynamically make those based on the level or based on what the user decides later. I'm not gonna go super into that either, because I think that's kind of outside of the scope of this project, but we will talk about getting them to work generally. All right, so there we go. Now, this isn't very centered right now. It's off-centered. I'm going to go to my HBox container. I'm going to go to my alignment, and I'm going to choose center. Didn't fix anything. And then my margin container here, I want to change my margins. So I'm going to make my right margin, I think 20. Of course not. So essentially, I want my bottom margin to be less. Let's change that first. My bottom margin's at 0. Top margin is still at -50. Alright, cool. And then I want this to move to the left, which I did it earlier today. If I set my right margin, nope, doesn't do anything. Alright, cool. So let's just set the margins on my HBox container then. So I want my left margin to be 20 is not enough. Let's go 40. And let's also make our separation. No, 24 is good. Let's go a little bit more. Let's say 36. And then that way I can step this down from 40 to say 30. Alright. That looks good. Now, the question is it going to keep that if I go to the game window? Nope, it did not. Alright, let me take a look at what I did here, because I messed around with this for a little bit this morning. I'll be right back. Okay, so here's what I need to do. I'm going to play around with my margins manually a little bit here, and with my margin container selected, I'm not going to look at the custom constants margin. Instead, I'm going to look at just the plain old margin here. I'm going to expand this all the way over to the side. I'm going to bring this down a little bit, and then I'm going to bring this over here and over here. Now I'm doing this manually. I'm going to make it better in just a second by actually looking here. So my left margin is 17. I'm going to round that up to 20. And then 20 from the left would be 557. And then my bottom, instead of being 81, I'll make that say 64. All right, cool. And now if I save it and go back to my game window, it should look better. Now my bottom UI, for some reason, I never made it to the bottom of the screen, so I'm just going to move that down there. And in here, I'm going to make sure that my bottom is at, well, that's weird. All right, well, I'll make my left at 0, my right at 576. And I'll leave this should be 1024. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm going to save everything now. So what I want to do essentially is I want a signal to go from when I press the pause button to pause almost everything in the screen except for a pause screen that I'm also going to need to make as well. And then that signal is going to make the pause screen slide in, and then you'll be able to choose continue or quit. Ideally you'd have sound options on there as well, but we haven't done anything with sound yet, so no sound options yet. Okay, right, so let's first of all make sure that this looks okay if we play the game. So in our game, we've got our buttons down here. They're not taking up too much screen space, and everything seems to kind of go together pretty well. So that's good. You are something. You know that? Oh, you are some kind of cat. Okay, so now we're going to make our pause panel. So I'm going to make a new scene, and I'm going to make this start with a canvas layer like we did for the other ones. I'm going to call this canvas layer pause. We'll just call it pause. As a child of this, I'm going to make a margin container. Margin container is going to be set to have a right margin of 20, and a left margin of 20, top margin of 384, and then a bottom margin of 896. Now, as a child of this, I'm going to make a texture rect. And my texture rect, I'm going to go to my art folder, UI. I'm going to grab that pause panel I just made. I'm going to pull this in here, right there. Oops. Okay, cool. That's not too bad. It could go over just a little bit more. So let me make my my left and right margins both. Well, 30 is too much. Let's go. Actually, I thought 32 was supposed to be just right. Yeah, 32 is supposed to be what it is. So 32 on left and 32 on right. And that looks pretty centered. And then as a child of my text rect, I'm going to make an HBox container to hold the buttons. So HBox container. And I'm going to manually resize this, and then I'll take a look at the margins to make sure that everything is where I want it to be. So I want my buttons to be roughly down here-ish. So looking at my margins, as I resize that, my top I'm going to set to 236. Right is going to be, let's say, 476. My left is going to be, let's see, 476 versus 512 is what? 2436. So this is going to be at 36 as well. And then my bottom, yeah, that's probably okay if I just leave it at 400. Cool. Now, two children to this, both texture buttons. So texture button, and I'll duplicate that. And then I'm going to highlight both of them. I'm going to set expand on. I'm going to keep aspect centered. I'm going to, in my size flags, no, not size flags, rect. I'm going to set my minimum size to be 192 on X and 100 on Y, which is the size I made the buttons themselves. And then in my HBox container, I'm going to give these a separation of, say, 20. I don't know if that was what worked out right or not. Yeah, I probably need more separation. Let's go 24, and then I'll actually try it out. So this first texture button, this is going to be for quit. And the second one here is going to be for continue. I'm going to go find their textures. And I've got my continue from the pause menu. And then for quit, I've got my quit for the pause menu. I need to open the textures first, though. All right, cool. Not quite right. So let's take a look at our HBox container. Alignment, we want this to be center. And that centers them. And then, it's not too bad, but I think I still want some more separation between the two. Yeah, it's pretty good. Alright, and then if I highlight both of these buttons here, oh yeah, no, they're taking up all their X position, so I don't want them to distort on Y. Cool. Now if you wanted to, you could add sound buttons here and here, but I'm not going to be using sound buttons for this. So I'm going to save this scene in scenes as pause, and this is going to need a script. So highlighting the main pause node, I'm going to make a new script. I'm going to inherit from the base menu panel though, that script I made a while ago. So base menu panel, so that I can have that slide in and slide out. And I'm going to save this in my scripts folder. Save and create. Now I don't need either process or ready, but I will need to, this doesn't need to make any signals, but it does need to know what buttons were pressed. So I'm going to click on my continue button, go to the signal pressed. I'm going to connect that with the canvas layer, and I'm going to do the same thing for the quit button. Connect with the canvas layer. Alright, now I need to also, to my main node here, add an animation player so I can have that slide in, slide out. animation player. Okay, and then in my animation player, I'm going to load an animation, slide in. I'm going to set my pause panel to be offset by 576 on X, and I will be right back. Okay, so when I press the continue button, I'm going to unpause everything in the scene. So to do that, I'm going to do get tree dot paused equals false to make it not paused anymore. And then I can get rid of this pass here. And then on quit, I think it's get tree quit, but I'm not 100% certain. I might need to look that one up. Yeah, I'm going to need to look at, is it exit? No, I'm going to need to look it up. So, oh, that's why. Get tree dot, yeah, there we go. Get tree dot quit. No, not Q delete. Quit. Cool. So I'm going to save that, and this is for when we press the pause button or the quit button. Now, this is the important part, and this is what makes pausing stuff relatively easy in Godot. I'm going to choose my pause up here, and then there's already a pause place. I'm going to set its mode to process, which means that it will ignore the pause signal that the main tree sends out to all of the children and grandchildren and all that stuff. So make sure to set your pause mode to process. Now I'm going to go back to my game window here, and I'm going to make an instance of that pause menu scene. Oh, thought I gave it a parent, but apparently not. Alright, cool. Now, what I want to do next is, let's take a look at my bottom UI, and I'm going to need to create some signals here with this. So my bottom UI, I'm going to make a script for it. This is going to be a new script. It's not going to inherit from anything, and I'm going to put it in my scripts folder. Save, create, and this is going to have a signal to go with it to tell that pause menu to come in. So signal pause game, and this doesn't need to have a process delta or a function ready, but I do need to connect my pause with my bottom UI. So pause button pressed connect to bottom UI, and then what I want to say here is emit signal, and the signal I want to emit is pause game, and then I want to do get tree dot paused equals true, which is going to pause the game. Now it's really important that you execute these in this order. You need to emit the pause game signal first and then pause everything, because if you pause everything first, this is going to pause itself, which is going to make it so that you can't emit that signal. Alright, so I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back to my game window. I'm going to find my bottom UI. I'm going to find that pause game signal. I'm going to connect it to my pause screen. And then what I want to do when we press this is slide in. And then I also forgot that after we press continue, we want to call slide out. Alright, so I'm going to save everything. Let's give this a try. Let's see if it works. So I'm going to hit play here. I'm going to press pause. Okay, now the important thing here is I can't interact with anything anymore. If I press any other button, nothing will happen. But if I press continue, it goes back out. So here's why that's kind of neat. So if I make a match and then pause the game, it pauses everything in the middle of matching. And then when I press continue, it continues. So pause, continue, right where it left off. Alright, and then let's just make sure that quit, yep, so quit exits. So there we go. You could make it so that quit quits you back to that main menu, which honestly is probably better for a mobile game versus just exiting right to the desktop, but there we go. We've We made our bottom UI better. We made a pause menu that actually pauses the game. So yeah, thanks very much for watching. The next episode is going to be a debug episode because there's a few things that we need to debug in the system right now. After that, we're going to start detecting a deadlock on the board and then generating a hint. And then I think boosters after that, and then the level select is after that. So, all right. You can follow me on Twitter to find out when I post new videos. You can join my Discord. Tons of great people there. Yeah, everybody out there, have yourselves a wonderful day. If you enjoyed this video, consider giving a like, subscribing to the channel, or telling a friend who might be interested. Also, please consider following me on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can earn access to tangible rewards, like early access to videos, backer-only videos and series, polls for future topics, streams, and even individual tutoring sessions. You can find a link to that in the description. And as always, have yourselves a wonderful day.